any subject is back there against the wall, and it's also with our experts, whom I'll introduce in a moment. There's a brochure, if you haven't got it already, that talks about tonight's activities that's useful. Part of tonight is going to include short presentations on topics that we think may be of interest. And if you open up the brochure, you'll see those in the center. We've got a topic on the reactor oversight process. This is where our plant resident inspectors talk about their day-to-day work at the plant to oversee safety. We've got a topic on tritium and environmental monitoring. What does the NRC do to monitor and measure effluents into the environment? We also got a topic on decommissioning. As the Palisades plant has announced its intention to close, the NRC will be looking to its decommissioning process to manage its oversight going forward. So those presentations will happen in the room behind you, and I'll make a short announcement once it's time so that people know they can move out this door and into the next room where our speakers will talk. When the presentation is done, then the speakers will come back into this room and be available to answer your questions, talk with you one-on-one. Unlike a moderated Q&A format that we hope will enable a little bit better dialogue among people. So you can attend each session or only those that you're interested in. And let me now introduce our people. As I mentioned, we got experts on decommissioning, radiation protection, environmental monitoring, spent fuel, and day-to-day plant safety. So if you wouldn't mind raising your hand when I call out your name. Eric Duncan. Right here. Eric is a branch chief with oversight of the Palisades plant from the region. We've got Jenny Rankin. Jenny is behind us here. She's a project manager at NRC headquarters. She's dealing with licensing the plant. Vika Midling and Prema Chandrathil are public affairs officers at the NRC. Julie Betcher and Kevin Pusateri are the resident inspectors who are stationed at the plant and responsible for daily inspection and oversight. John Cassidy and Val Myers are radiation protection experts, environmental monitoring experts. Rex Edwards and Ted Carter are decommissioning experts and spent fuel experts. So we've got name tags on. You don't have to memorize that. There's no quiz. We've got the name tags to help you. Cami Hernandez is here at the signage sheet to help with meeting logistics and things like that too. And I'm, again, Jared Heck. I'm just here to help you with any questions you might have, get you to the right people, make introductions, refer you to information. Anything you need, come see me and I'll help. So as you go about tonight's activities, I encourage you to talk, chat each other up, ask questions, listen, and we'll go from there. The first presentation will be at 6:15, and I'll make a short announcement when that's about to begin. Thanks again for coming, and enjoy the evening.
No, I don't. I know the name, but I don't.
It's a familiar face. How are you?
Hi.
Eric Duncan.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
So
Your name
you
again?
are
You're Kathy
Reactor
Barnes.
Projects. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Barnes, I know that because I see right on your,
It's okay if
right
I
on
film
your
you?
camera.
Yeah.
Say
It's
again?
okay if I film you?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. You know, what are your chief of division reactor projects?
Right. I'm a supervisor.
With the U.S. Okay, with the NRC.
NRC, right?
Okay.
So I work at our regional office in Lisle,
Okay.
and so the resident inspectors, they work for me.
Okay. You
Have you
know.
met Julie and Kevin? You've met Julie before. I know
okay.
you've probably met Julie.
Yeah.
You know, April's on leave.
Yeah. You know, one thing about this kind of a thing that bothers me is that people, you know, you can't voice concerns among people. You know, like if I say something to you, nobody else is going to hear it. You know, that's the thing, and I feel like I have some important things to say. You know, like one of my concerns is that they won't do a complete cleanup. You know, like Vermont Yankee. I heard a presentation about that, and the contamination of tritium goes down 100 over 100 feet. And they just removed a few inches off the top. So the rest of it was just sitting there like a time bomb, just waiting to leach into the water. And here, I know they've had like tritium leaks for like over 10 years here, and they couldn't stop it because they had to take the plant down. Well, now they have to take the plant down, but the tritium is probably contaminated really deeply. So I'm kind of concerned that they get that out so that it doesn't go in the lake.
Well, how would you feel to know that there are people here tonight that can answer those questions?
Well, that'd be good. And
they are.
for them to actually do it. Another concern I have is that Entergy might sell it to their subcontractors who might form a limited liability corporation and just not do a complete cleanup or leave, nuclear waste like that cask with the bad welds. What if they just leave that there on site? Like those kind of concerns. But there's going to be like nuclear waste stored there forever, not monitored or whatever.
Right. So our decommissioning experts can answer a lot, if not all, those questions. And actually, Entergy officials are here tonight.
Yeah.
Right? And so some of the questions that you have would probably be more appropriate to direct to them, and they're available as well. That's them right over there.
Okay, those guys over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're here to answer your questions, and I think this format will do that.
All right. Well, what are they going to do to ensure that there is a complete cleanup?
Let's go talk about that. Yeah. We've got some folks over here who can answer that.
Okay. All right. I have concerns I know they've had tritium leaks underneath the piping underneath the plant for a long time, at least 10 years or longer. And at Vermont, the leaks go down like 100 feet, and they're only taking a couple inches off the top, so that they're leaving a lot of the tritium contamination. And my concern is that they're going to just let it just seep into the lake over time, which will increase as time goes on the tritium into the lake, which will eventually contaminate it more and more. Like I know up at Big Rock, they actually have plutonium up there. Plutonium leaks into the sediment. Greenpeace analyzed it and found plutonium down in that bay area from Big Rock Point. And if you go up there now, the area is contaminated. It has it's not clean water. I don't know what that contamination has to do with it, but it's got scum, and it's not good.
Yeah. If you have specific plant questions related to that,
yeah.
Have you met John?
Well, I don't know if that's because of the radioactive waste spills that are still leaking into the bay, the Grand Traverse Bay, where
we're here
that is. But I'm saying,
tonight,
that could happen at Palisades if it's not all cleaned up. Like when they do cancer surgery, they take out the cancer and they keep analyzing it until they've hit good tissue, so that they get all of it. When they do cancer surgery, and I think that's how it should be when you decommission a nuclear power plant. You should keep analyzing the soil until you hit clean stuff. If you have to go 120 feet, you go 120 feet.
Yeah, and the ground is surveyed, and the NRC does independent inspections of that through the decommissioning process.
Yeah.
Even as the plant's operating, they have to go ahead and monitor the ground and the water.
I know, I've seen the wells, but the wells are not underneath the plant where the tritium's leaking, and they're just a distance, just spotted out.
Let me go ahead and take you over and introduce you to Val and John, because there are effluent, experts over here who can go ahead and talk a little bit more about the releases and kind of how we walk through that, as it's operating right now. And then even, again, that sampling. In order for the plant to go ahead and terminate the license after the decommissioning activities, it does have to go ahead and meet our rules and regulations for unrestricted.
Are you going to allow them to sell it? I mean, Yankee, that's another thing that they do, is they'll take their plant, when they Consumers Energy said they're going to do this for relicensing. Well, then they sold it to Entergy, who never did those things, you know. And they just brushed it, they swept it under the rug. And I'm kind of concerned, well, you know, they say, oh yeah, Energy says we're going to clean this up, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then they sell it to an LLC, which could be their subcontractors making a new company. You know, I feel like you need to be able to stop that. I know it's like free enterprise or whatever, but there's got to be some kind of responsibility. You know, and it shouldn't all fall on the victims.
Yeah, maybe
you know.
If
Our focus with the inspectors are ensuring that plant, as they decommission, is following the rules and regulations. And the regulations are based on the number one area, which is safety, making sure the workers, the public, and the environment continue to be safe with our rules and regulations. The ultimate, you know,
Are you going to do your own testing or rely on their testing?
we do go ahead.
You do your own?
And Rex's team would go out there and do those
I
independent.
think maybe just if I could explain the process for cleaning up a site, kind of in general. Palisades hasn't shut down yet, so we don't know what they'll do.
Yeah, and you probably don't know what you're going to get into either.
Well, that's not
No.
true. They're required to maintain a historical record of
Right.
what they've
Yeah.
done
Oh,
on
okay.
site, and we inspect that. That's what John and Valerie do, is verify that what they put in that record reflects what actually occurred, and then that will come to my group eventually as the site gets cleaned up. We'll look at it. They'll have to characterize the site, meaning they have to go identify what's there, and then whatever's present, then you're right, they should go and clean that up if it's detectable. The requirements are, it has to meet a certain level of radiation limits, and it also has to be as low as reasonably achievable. So during the cleanup process, the soils will be analyzed. Anything that would need to be cleaned and removed, they would clean and remove it, and then they'll analyze again. And then before it's all done, they have to demonstrate to us that they've met those criteria.
Are they going to take the spent fuel and remove it, or are they going to let it sit there?
But you're probably aware that the country doesn't have a permanent disposal facility for spent
Right.
fuel. So until we have that, the fuel will remain on site.
Could you finish the rest of the process, how we were talking about how they're cleaning up, and then what the NRC does to go ahead? Because that was another one of your questions. What's the NRC doing, and is the NRC going to be actually doing inspections? So, yeah.
Thanks. So after the site has done their analysis and their surveys and provided to us to attempt to demonstrate they've met the criteria, we're going to come independently and perform similar surveys, not with them, but independent. We have contracts with Oak Ridge National Laboratory for them to assist us in these surveys. And we will also take soil samples. And we do that before any backfill goes into the site, before they would say bury something. We would do that survey before it can't be.
Can you explain how clean the ground has to be? Because you take in a scenario, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, it's called the resident farmer, right?
That'd be one scenario.
Could you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. So our requirements are a dose requirement. So it has to not give a member of the public any more than this dose limit, and as low as reasonably achievable. And so we develop a model where we assume what would be a worst case scenario, and we often call the worst case scenario a resident farmer. And that would assume that the site is sold to a farmer who's going to then live on the land, grow crops on the land, have livestock that are going to eat those crops, and then the farmer would eat the livestock.
Well, that wouldn't happen there. That's a sand dune.
It's still the worst case scenario if somebody were to consume all of that equipment.
Like live 100% on the land, everything sustainable, growing, eating crops, food, livestock, is everything based on being on that property.
And a well where they would pull water out of the well and drink that water, and all of that would be
Calculated.
right. So anything in the soils would come out of the soils and be consumed by that farmer, and it has to meet those dose limits before we would terminate the license.
Another concern is terrorism. It's like those spent fuel pools sitting there. I mean, it's a potential terrorist target, and it could be like a Fukushima where that stuff is melting down into the lake and too hot to handle. I mean, a lot of people are concerned about that too.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Ted Carter. I'm a senior project manager with the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I've also been designated as the project manager for the decommissioning process at Palisades. What I'm going to do is give you, and you can use the poster here if you can see it, I'm sorry, give you an idea of the process for decommissioning. The process starts with notification, a notification letter. And this letter is very important because this letter first tells you, is a letter from the licensee or the owner of the site, and it states that this site is going to close on this particular date. This date is very important. Say if the date is October 1st, 2018. This date is very important because within 2 years of this date, the licensee will send or submit to the NRC what we call a PSDAR, a post-shutdown decommissioning activities report, long, PSDAR. This document is important, very important, because this document will give you, or will have in it, the decommissioning plan, the plan for decommissioning. It will also have the schedule for decommissioning. It will also have the environmental impact for decommissioning. And it will also have other information such as cost. What will it cost to decommission this site from A to Z? Very important document. Now, these two documents will be put into our tracking system, the NRC tracking system. These two documents will also be put in the Federal Register. Now, we call it public, can't think of the term. It will be put in the Federal Register. Noticing, it will be noticed in the Federal Register. Now, the Federal Register is the government area where we post all important information. Information for the shareholders, information for concerned citizens, information that's very useful, where you can go see it and comment. This is all about openness, all about openness. Okay, I want to repeat that term, openness. So now we have the notification, we have the PSDAR, and we also have subject matter experts within the NRC. Now, it's my job to make sure that the subject matter experts get this PSDAR and review this PSDAR and make sure that it's very clear. Now, we have a process called the Request for Additional Information, RAIs. This is a process that the NRC uses to get more information from the licensee. If something's not clear in a document, we execute this, this document, the RAI. And so we use this document to get additional information. Now, this may go back and forth with the licensee, the information. But until we know it's clear, we will not take action on it. Now, we have the PSDAR. Now, there's three strategies to decommissioning a site. Three strategies. Let me have a drink of water here, I'm getting dry. Thank we have 3 strategies in decommissioning. The first strategy is the decon strategy. It's immediately we try to, or the licensee will try to put the site in a safe and stable condition and go directly to license termination. That's decon. The next strategy is safe store, where the licensee will take the same components, the structures, the systems, or equipment, and will defer the dismantlement of these systems until a later date. This gives time for this equipment, for the radioactivity to decay. So it's based on time, and then it goes into license termination. The third strategy is entombment. Now, I will say, with the third strategy, the NRC licensees have never used this strategy. This is where you take a long-lasting substance, such as concrete, and you encase all the equipment in the concrete, and you let it last. Time again, radioactivity down. Okay. Now, usually the choice for any facility going into decommissioning is number 1 or number 2 or a combination of the 2. So now the key is to make the facility safe and stable, put it in a safe and stable condition. Also, to do that, we have a system called the license action request. And what this is, if you have procedures, you have a safety document, you have an emergency plan, we're trying to get the site is going from an operation site to a decommissioning site. So the requirements are reduced. But in order to do that, the licensee has to send a license action request to the NRC for our approval. They cannot make changes in a procedure without approvals. They cannot make changes in a procedure that takes fuel from a reactor to a fuel pool, or fuel from a fuel pool to a cask system, a storage cask system. They can't do it unless they have our approval. So this is the mechanism that's used. Now the LAR, the license action request, is also put in the Federal Register. So then again, it's about openness, okay? Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that when we received a PSDAR, let's go back, within 90 days of our receipt of that document, that main document, the NRC will sponsor a public meeting that will center around questions and comments on the PSDAR. Okay, that's very important.
Will that be at the website?
That will be on the website,
Okay.
NRC website. Yes, it will. Okay, so now the site is in a safe and stable condition. Radioactivity is reducing over time, and the fuel has been moved to a storage pad or storage facility. You may ask, what happens during that time? Okay, that part of decommissioning. Well, Rex Edwards, who is the senior health physicist on this project, is the person that will discuss inspection and monitoring the decommissioning project at that point in time.
Thanks, Ted. As Ted mentioned, I'm Rex Edwards, Senior Health Physicist in the Region 3 Office of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Throughout decommissioning, and for as long as there is a license at that site, the NRC will be conducting inspections. They won't end so long as there's a license there, and will periodically be there. If you listen to Julie Betcher, the acting senior resident right now, you may have heard her mention that there'll be a transition period in the inspection program. That transition period takes 6 months to a year, where the inspection activities will be moved from the on-site office to my office, and then my team and I will be responsible for inspecting and the oversight of the Palisades plant for decommissioning. The focus is on safety of the decommissioning process and the safe storage of fuel. So we will tailor our inspections to those specific activities. I'll add a little bit to what Ted said about the license amendments request process. There are things that the station can do, some changes that they can make if they follow a regulatory process that don't require our approval. Through this transition period, there's a lot of changes, and that's a focus that we have on those programs that are important to the safe decommissioning of the plant, and that's what we'll be looking at and focusing on. But throughout the decommissioning phase and for as long as there's a license, including spent fuel stored on that site, we'll conduct safety and security inspections of the facility. With that,
Go back to me.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Okay, so that's a high-level overview of the generic decommissioning process. Thanks, Rex and Ted.
I'm Valerie Myers, John Cassidy. We are health physicists from the Region 3 office for the NRC, and so basically what that means is we specialize in radiation protection. That's all we do, both on the occupational side and the public. And one aspect of that is the radiological environmental monitoring program, which we know that with the site's announcement of planning on shutting down and going into decommissioning, that there are probably questions out there as to what this may look like during that transition. So we figured we'd give you a little brief description on what that would look like here today. So just a little bit of overview things we're going to go through real quick. We'll look at the regulatory framework from 10 CFR Part 50 down to the technical specifications, the off-site dose calculation manual, and then a little bit on how we do inspections now during operation and what that would look like during decommissioning. I know this is a lot of words, sorry for that. But it starts with the 10 CFR. 10 CFR Part 34 Alpha requires nuclear reactor applicants to basically tell us how they're going to run their effluent systems to maintain dose to the public ALARA. We hear about dose to the occupational workers being ALARA quite a bit, but it also applies to members of the public, so off-site as well.
ALARA? Yeah, maybe.
Oh, sorry, as low as reasonably achievable. So even though we have limits that they have to meet, we tell them that you're capable of providing much better than that, giving much less dose, so you're going to do it. Is basically what that applies to. But yeah, as low as reasonably achievable is on the public as well as the occupational side of things. And then another 10 CFR 50.36 Alpha requires that the effluent programs be governed by technical specifications as part of their license, and it is site specific. Because every site is a little bit different, so it's tailored specifically to that site. Another 10 CFR Part 50 requirement is Appendix I. We were talking a moment ago about ALARA as low as reasonably achievable. This sets those ALARA standards, but what else it also does is it requires that Palisades have an environmental monitoring program so that they can correlate any effluent radioactive releases to any impact to the environment. So that is required straight from the regulations. And it also requires that they do an annual, what we call land use census, where they have to go around the area around the site and understand how the land around the site is being used. Is there dairy farms? What kind of gardens are being grown? Where are people living? Drinking water, things of that nature, because all of that is utilized in the assessing of dose to the members of the public yourselves. Everybody with me so far on that? Okay. And I guess the big thing to take away from this is when they shut down, pull the fuel out of the reactor and say they're never going to start back up, this still applies. They don't, this doesn't go away, this regulation still holds. So just because they shut down doesn't mean any of this goes away.
When you talk about an area, geographically, how big is an area?
I don't think I understand your question.
You referred to doing a census of types of housing and so forth. Well, how large is this area? You're doing like within so many miles or what?
I don't know if I know off the top of my head. Do you know, John,
Well,
for sure?
The answer is identifying the closest location, not all the locations in between. So the nearest resident is listed as the Van Buren State Park manager.
Okay.
Right, and then they drive around for the nearest garden, and they drive around for the nearest, harvest crop or dairy farm.
Okay, so it will
So
not come
it's-
into the city, but will stay, whatever's closest.
That's correct.
Gotcha, okay.
So do you monitor those particular areas, like the closest house, the closest business? Do you monitor those specific sites?
The monitoring is, I won't say that specifically. The monitoring is based on where the most probable or the highest dose could be. So for, I don't want to get into too much technical detail, but for gaseous effluents, they will look at meteorological data to know where the wind's going, and they will set up their air sampling stations based on where the highest dose would be from the stuff in the air.
Mm-hmm.
You look at irrigation and things for other things, but I wouldn't say necessarily the closest might not be the actual one.
Mm-hmm.
But it is all strategic on what they do.
Yeah, they used to have a page or two in the telephone books that were regularly distributed about the nuclear plant and what it entailed, and I'm wondering how much of that kind of information got in there, and where is it now? Is it that available to the public?
Are you asking if the results or whatnot not from the environmental monitoring program is available to the public?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. If you go back in there on the table, we have a printout that will give you the website and the actual NRC number for the last 5 years worth, I think, of both the effluent and environmental reports, which will discuss all that. Yeah, so they are available.
Yeah, historically, Palisades has had a problem with their monitoring equipment working, and so are you reviewing that to see if that is working now and whether it will continue to work throughout this process? Because they've had a problem with that in the past.
Yes, we review their equipment, I would say, as part of our routine inspection activities. And anomalies for the effluent or the environmental side of things is called out in the report, and we do review those. Sometimes air sampling stations will lose power if a storm goes through. We look for trends or things that could be within their ability to prevent that shouldn't have happened. Sometimes in Michigan, water may freeze. They might not be able to get a water sample, but we look for things that they could prevent.
Well, some of the systems didn't work for like 280 days. And so that's totally unreasonable for it not to be working. And I'm concerned that, what are you going to do to ensure that that equipment is working throughout this process?
Again, when they go into decommissioning, this will still be part of the inspection program. We do review those. And I don't know if this is the monitor in particular, but they did just do a wholesale replacement on their main gaseous effluent monitor beginning of this year, I believe, because they were having issues with it being out of service. So I'm not for sure that's the one, but...
You want to talk about compensatory actions?
Yes, and if the monitor is down, they do what we call compensatory actions, where they do an increased sampling frequency. I don't know if everybody knows this, but the rad monitors themselves are not there to quantify what is going out. They're there to detect increases above what they expect, to isolate the system or warn operators. How they actually know what's going out is they actually go and take samples, and they put them on more sophisticated, more sensitive laboratory equipment to test that. And if a rad monitor goes out of service, there is some action they have to take on the sampling side to make up for the rad monitor being out of service.
Are you going to be able to monitor the monitoring?
I don't know if I understand.
Yes,
Well, when
we'll
they-
continue our inspection activities through their month.
In other words, if Palisades is doing the monitoring and they're coming up with the facts and figures, are you going to be able to see if they're telling the truth?
Yes. We look at all aspects of this. We are out in the field with them. watching them take samples, watching them package them for the lab. They use a third-party laboratory to do the actual analysis. And
Is that lab
analysis.
honorable? I mean, are they going to be bought out by some interest, or are they really going to be honest about their sampling analysis?
They have to be part of a quality assurance program, which we require to verify that, where they get tested by another entity, where they're basically given samples that they don't know what they read, and they have to be able to show that they can do that.
Okay.
So I'm confident that.
Yeah, there should be some kind of checks.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
I'm confident that we would know if something were amiss.
Good.
We just look at too many levels of it to not. All right. Good questions. Okay, so we were talking about Part 50. Now we're on to the next level down, Part 50, required technical specifications. These are site-specific, though for most sites this part looks generally the same. They have to maintain an off-site dose calculation manual. This is really the details of how this program works. And these are, actually I think we'll talk about later, these are actually publicly available as well. So if you wanted to get into the nitty-gritty of how this happens, you can do that. They are allowed to make changes to their ODCM, but it has to go to through a rigorous review to make sure it doesn't reduce the effectiveness of the program. An example for this is if a dairy farm comes into business within 5 miles of the site, they would add milk sampling to their program. So we allow them to make changes to their ODCM so that fluctuations in how the land is used, how meteorology happens, they're able to do the right thing without having to do a license amendment request on that. And again, the technical specifications actually require them to submit the annual report we've been talking about. And again, on the table in the other room, there is information on how to get to all the annual reports. And like I discussed earlier, the ODCM is also publicly available. And again, these technical specifications will still apply during decommissioning. So all of that information will still be available. We talked about the off-site dose calculation manual a little bit. Guidance on this, if you want to look for the guidance on this, New Reg 1301 is the appropriate one for PWRs. It gives them the outline for how their off-site dose calculation manual should work. So there is definitely detailed guidance out there on what that should look like. It goes over both the effluent controls and the environmental monitoring for effluent. It talks about how they calculate dose. Sample collection, we talked about comp samples for rad monitor to be out of service. All of that will be in there. It will tell you exactly if this rad monitor goes out of service, you got to sample this system at this frequency, analyze for these things. It goes into that detail on all of those. And it also goes through alarm set points for the rad monitors. And then in the environmental monitoring program, it will tell you where they're sampling, what media they're sampling. Is it water, soil, air samples, things of that nature. All those locations, it'll tell you how often they're sampling, and it'll tell you what they're sampling for. Is it, I don't want to get into too much technical detail, but different types of radioisotopes. And it will also tell them how hard they have to look for these. Any type of analytical instrumentation cannot read down to 0, so we tell them how low they have to be able to look to find this stuff. And all of that, again, if you want to get into nitty-gritty, it is in their ODCM, and that is publicly available. Everybody still with me so far? Okay. So inspections. Again, John and I, we're doing the environmental inspections during operation here. And this is governed by Inspection Manual Chapter 2515 for the operations phase, the operating reactors. We look at all the effluent environmental controls through these 2 inspection procedures, 71124.06 and 71124.07, which looks at the effluents and then the environmental monitoring piece of it, the REMP program. And we do a bit of everything. We do documentation review, but we're also out in the field observing all of this. For the documentation, you know, we talked about them being able to make changes to their ODCM. We will review those to make sure that the review on it was adequate and they didn't reduce the effectiveness of their program. And again, we will be out in the field as well. So during decommissioning, things will change a little bit. Decommissioning is governed by a different inspection manual, chapter 2561 for decommissioning. But again, the effluent environmental monitoring programs, they're assessed annually through 84750. Again, documentation review, field observations. So again, governed by a different program, but still nothing really changes. They're still required to do the same things. It's still going to be inspected as it has always been. So I know there's probably some worry out there that, you know, once they shut down that we're going to stop looking at this stuff, and we're not. It's still going to continue. So, that's all I had. Or wait, I had conclusions. So same regulatory framework as we went through, and same inspection routine. So really, I would expect things are going to change. As time goes on, you know, I would expect that their ODCM is always being updated based on plant conditions, and that will change. But again, we review those as we always have to make sure that they're still adequate. So.
Thanks, Valerie, and thanks for the good questions. So I know you'll take more, John will take more back in the main room. Technical experts will review that to decide, have they sufficiently justified it. But I would encourage you to take that, let's take that question out to Rex and Ted and see what they have to say, what they can add to that, because they really, we wanted to bring the right people for these kind of questions.
I know there's some tricky stuff that they can do. Like there was a site out in the country where Consumers Energy dug a huge pit, and then they brought in some kind of things in semis and dumped. And it was felt maybe that was radioactive effluent because they were taking the generator out of their thing at that time. And so anyway, so it took about 2 years to get an inspection there. And then they were forewarned about 3 weeks ahead of time. Now the soil at that site was really hard packed, okay? But at the time of the inspection, it was all like fresh, like they bought it from a nursery. It was this black, you know, loose soil that wasn't there before. And then they tested that. So that's a concern, is that they're gonna be, you know, okay, yeah, we removed it all. You can test this soil. Meanwhile, they bought in 10 feet of clean sand, and you can test that. No, there's no more radioactivity. But below their 10 feet that they just brought in, it's all contaminated. I'm just concerned that stuff like that can happen. I know they do that kind of thing.
The question about how is soil excavation handled, we should ask.
I mean, you have to really watchdog them, because I know how they work things. It's called money. They're going to try and get away with as much, honestly.
I mean, the NRC is going to do careful technical reviews of that decommissioning plan when it's submitted. But I don't take my word for it. Again, I think talking to Rex and Ted would be a good idea.
Yeah.
So you two are here just to give the presentation, or are you going to be assigned to Palisades?
I'm currently assigned to Palisades. John had it before me. I took it over a couple years ago. So.
Okay. And are you then going to be rotated out every 7 years like the resident inspectors are, or what's the situation? Are you here for the duration, or are you what's the situation there?
There's currently, when they go into decommissioning, the oversight of that will go to a different branch. It's actually Rex's branch that does the RP inspections on the decommissioning sites.
Okay, so you were just here to give us a presentation.
No, I've been inspecting. I inspect Palisades. I inspect lots of sites. We're based out of the regional office. Yeah, we were just there 2 weeks ago, actually. We're out at each site several times a year to do these inspections. So yeah, I'm not just here to give a presentation. I've been inspecting Palisades for a while now.
Are these inspections random?
I'm going to say yes and no to that. Our inspections are pre-planned. They do not know exactly what I'm looking at. They don't dictate what I look at. We do what we call smart sampling with that, and that we'll do inspection prep to determine what areas we think there could be vulnerabilities in and look at those, but they do not know what that's going to be. I will admit we do schedule these because it's also important that when we're doing this effluent environmental monitoring program inspection, it kind of helps for the person that runs this program to be there that week. If they're not, it's not going to be a good inspection.
So how could you not catch when monitoring equipment's not working for months at a time?
It's not that we don't catch it. We verify that they do the compensatory actions that they're required to do. And we verify that during the inspections.
I'm supposed to feel good about that, huh?
No, a groundwater being out of service, if I don't know the details on it, for 200 some days, that should not happen.
Thank you.
It shouldn't. Now, I will tell you, like recently, like in the next annual report, you're going to probably see that this Radmar that they just swapped out was out of service greater than 30 days, so it's going to be in their annual report. They were doing a wholesale replacement on it. So I don't want to beat them up on having some outlaw wanted to replace
This isn't
it.
the first time, is my point.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
gone back and found the reports. This has gone on a lot here. And if you're inspecting that, if you're coming in and looking at that stuff, how are they getting away, how is this going on for this length of time with nothing being done and no action? How should we have confidence in the NRC when we can go and see the reports where this equipment's not been working and nothing's happened to change that, is my point.
And I guess what I would say to that is we don't rely solely on that equipment. There's several barriers in there. We verify that the other barriers that have to be in place when that fails are in fact in place on that, so.
But it's my air that I breathe. I live in this area.
Yeah. I understand.
All right, thanks, Valerie, and thanks everyone. Again, the meeting is still going on. If you want to talk to Valerie or Rex or Ted, please do that. Please take advantage.
Oh, did you get the Nuke Speak Lingo card?
No.
All right, they had the Nuke Speak Lingo card, and it had nuclear catchphrases, or I think they use the term buzzwords, you know, phrases that we use in the industry, licensees use. And when someone got a line, they ran around the room and they threw atomic fireballs. And so I just always bring them. It's funny. So,
I like the chocolate better.
I do too.
I like the chocolate
better.
Is it nuclear too?
No, it is not. That is good old American Hershey's Pennsylvania chocolate. Although
near 3 Mile Island.
I think Ferrara Pan, I think, makes atomic fireballs, which is also good old American
This
candy.
is so cute.
So
you bring your own now.
So I bring my own.
So if somebody gives you a hard time, you can pelt them.
No, I won't throw a fireball at them, but it was. And actually, I don't. Do you remember Jack Geisner?
Yeah.
Jack Geisner is the one who then said, okay, you go bring your own atomic fireballs.
Well, good for Jack.
Because I've always had candy on my table. He said, well, you should bring fireballs.
Is he retired?
No, he is not. He is the director of the Division of Nuclear Material Safety in Region 3, which...
This is here. This is Region 3.
Chicago.
Yeah.
This is Region 3, and then he is the DNMS. And don't ask me exactly what kind of nuclear material. I mean, there are nuclear materials and lots of things out there we don't realize. Survey meters and Jack is his division inspects.
Right.
And manages the
radioactive waste metal recycling.
Any kind of right. Like I said, you couldn't quote me on it because I work for reactor projects, so I really don't know. But Jack is still around. And that's
so are you
going to
work on Palisades too, Carmen?
Well, I will be.
Cammie.
I'll be Cammie. Good night. Thank you. No, I'll be there.
See, bye, Cammie.
Bye. Good night. I'll be there for a while. You know, after the plant closes, how long, I don't know. So, but I support the residents that cook also. So I'll still do that. I'll be there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Question about the decommissioning. Now, from my understanding, the money pool that was supposed to be for decommissioning has been kind of tapped, and it's not as much as they might need to do decommissioning. What's going to happen when they run out of money to do the decommissioning?
Decommissioning fund
Right.
is reported to us every 2 years when the plant's operating. And you know, if there were shortfalls in the fund, the site would have to explain how they're going to make that up. It's important to know that the fund itself, the requirements are that they have assurance that the fund will be have a value that's enough to complete decommissioning when it's time to do decommissioning.
So you won't compromise it? You won't say, well, you know, you don't have to do this, or because you can't, there's no money, or...
The fund can only be used for legitimate decommissioning expenses. So any other use of that would be improper. I'm an engineer. I don't review the financial side of things. We have economists in headquarters that do that review for us. But legally, the site cannot use that money for anything.
I heard they already have. I heard they already have.
And if you have information, the NRC is certainly interested in knowing what that is, and we can have a process to review and evaluate that. But I'm not aware of anything that was improperly done with the fund.
Yeah, I've heard that they
those records are all publicly available. You can pull all of those submittals and see for yourself what the dollars were.
Now, if they do have a shortfall and they need like $10 million more, they're going to like charge their ratepayers?
There's multiple ways that they could make up for any inadequacies. Most of those are financial instruments, letters of credit, parent guarantee. The regulations kind of give some guidance. Well, there's regulatory guidance that explains kind of options that they would have. Again, that's not my area of expertise, and we would refer that to an economist in our headquarters office.
So what happens? Do they have to get a license from you guys to oversight to decommission? What happens if they sell the company?
Well, there's a process for that too, and they have to meet the requirements to transfer the license. The NRC has to approve that. And if all the requirements were met, then the license could be transferred. The new owner of that license takes on full liability for decommissioning. So they are now held responsible for the decommissioning.
What if they're a limited liability corporation, though?
It wouldn't matter. They're still liable for it. The decommissioning fund is held in a trust. So the company doesn't manage that fund. Some independent party has responsibility for the management of it, and withdrawals can't be made without their approval. And that, again, the approval would be for legitimate decommissioning expenses. The NRC is also a beneficiary of that trust. So if there were some reason why the decommissioning wasn't occurring by that entity, the NRC can direct that decommissioning be done and use those funds.
Are there any safeguards to stop from selling a nuclear power plant to a foreign entity?
Yes, and somebody else here may be better suited to answer that question, but I believe, could a foreign entity own a nuclear power plant?
Are there any like safeguards to stop a foreign entity, like say Russia, from buying up plutonium?
The NRC has regulations regarding foreign ownership, and then plutonium, I mean, getting material from nuclear power plants.
Right.
Right now, all the material that goes from nuclear power plants would go ahead and be moved into, like the fuel would go ahead and get transferred into those dry cask storages.
There are limitations on foreign ownership.
Years ago, we were talking about that Badwell cask 5, I think, at Palisades.
Multi-assembly basket number 4.
4, okay, cask 4. Okay, and at that time, I was told that it would be harder or more deadly to try to move the nuclear waste out of that cask into a new cask because there might be spills, because they've never done it, and because they didn't have any better casks than the ones they had. So does that mean that all of that nuclear waste in the cast is just going to stay indefinitely at Palisades?
Maybe we just repeat a little of the history. When that cask was loaded, it had to pass a series of tests that the NRC requires, and it passed all of those tests. So that's multiple tests, multiple welds, examinations of those welds, pressure tests, and vacuum tests. It passed all of those, and any one of those would indicate a failure, leaking of the cask.
But the defect happened later.
After the canister was loaded, the manufacturer of that went back and reviewed some records, and they found what we refer to as indications. It's called an indication because it could be something that you want to look at and determine whether or not there's a problem. They did that, and they looked at it a little bit further. They did some engineering evaluations and concluded that it wasn't of concern. It wasn't going to fail in time. And the NRC independently reviewed that, evaluated it. We've documented it in various reports and concluded the same, that throughout that life of that canister, it wasn't going to degrade and become worse or become a concern. The canisters are designed to be what we call retrievable. So you would have the ability to take that canister out of storage and do something else with it.
Are they planning on keeping all those storage casks there, or are they going to take them away from the lake and move them someplace?
The national strategy we've talked about before is for a centralized permanent disposal location. So ultimately that's still the national strategy, is to remove those and put them in that area when the nation decides on what that's going to be.
You know, that's kind of, I don't know that that's necessarily the best option, because then you've got this stuff on the roads and rails, and you know, then you could have spills. Transporting it could be really deadly and hazardous and a lot of problems. Why couldn't they just get it away from the lake a bit and then just really, you know, like keep a good safeguard on it and monitor it?
I understand your concerns, and that's an evaluation that both the site has done, and our independent experts have also performed those evaluations to ensure that that doesn't happen. We continue to inspect that. We always will inspect it as long as there's fuel still stored at that site. We'll be present to see if there's any changes to what was previously evaluated.
1,000 years from now, you can guarantee
That's
that.
right. Yeah,
I wish. I don't even know if our country's going to be here in 1,000 years.
You're right. Nobody can predict for certainty
You know.
what the Nuclear Regulatory Commission will be like. But present day is the inspection program will be in exist for as long as there's fuel there. There's no other way around that. And then your concerns about shipping, transportation, we share those concerns. And that's why
they're
we
like
license those.
I think they're doing shipment now from Canada to Savannah, is it, or North Georgia or North Carolina or someplace for reprocessing?
Radioactive material is shipped across the country all the time. It's happening presently. That type of container, that package, is licensed and approved by the NRC, and then we work with our
Well, it's
partners.
Canadian. It's coming from Canada.
It would still have to be
an
approved design that would be allowed on our public roads.
When you talk about radioactive material, you mean like all sorts of like radiopharmaceuticals. There's also like construction, material that's used.
I think this is more high-level radioactive waste. That's the
we
biggest
regulate
concern.
all those
MOX,
things.
mixed oxide, that MOX fuels. That's a real big concern. What happens with that stuff when that's shipped around?
The requirement, their transportation requirements, from the NRC, the Department of Transportation also. So it is highly...
It's happened though. There have been spills and
radioactive?
In New Mexico, Arizona, there's been a couple of them out there on the roads.
Are you?
Yeah, in the past.
Are you aware of any?
Yeah, there was.
Not of
Semi tips over, semi accidents.
But radioactive fuel, radioactive material. I mean,
Probably.
There may be
There's nothing in our jurisdiction that we're aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happened. It was out on a highway, maybe dealing with Los Alamos or something out there. Transporting stuff out on the road, and there was a semi accident. Yeah,
So
DOE.
that's a different type.
It's a DOE
jurisdiction
stuff.
that's different.
Yeah, so that's why we're
Yeah.
not familiar. Sorry.
Yeah.
The shipping requirements are commensurate with the risk. So the higher risk, the more stringent the requirements are. Spent fuel would be among the highest requirements because of the risk. So those packages is kind of a general term we use for a shipping container. It's highly robust to take a variety of accidents.
Okay. All right.